I have been talking about writing. Now, writing implies a reader, just as storytelling implies a listener. This session I want to begin with by paying respect to a reader. When I write with the hope that somebody will read my work. And I could always say that there was one reader who would read anything that I had written, and that was Mr Ajmer Singh. Mr Ajmer Singh passed away last week. He was not an academic, he was not a scholar. He was what you call a common reader. A common reader is a breed that is quickly disappearing throughout the world, just like the bookshops in the world are disappearing. He read widely and he read sympathetically. But he was more than just a reader. He was an exemplary human being. I was so moved by his passing away that I wrote a few lines for him that I would like to read. Farewell, Ajmer. Class. It is an end of an era for us, the passing away of a way of life. With him, our culture too is gone. How could a quiet, unassuming man mean so much? He did. We know a way of being is khatam. He wants us to travel light by air. So he takes care of the excess luggage. We feel light and unencumbered, like carefree travelers. We are grateful. He has bid farewell to many sojourners from this airport. Our city is burning. Soldiers are in the street. He gives us refuge in his house. His reassuring presence calms us. It will go away like a bad storm, he says. Tomorrow it will be fine again. You will see. Indeed, we wake up to a fine day. The remaining days are fine too. This time, you're escaping a flood. His own street is a river. You wade through chest-deep water. He's waiting by his house to embrace your dripping body. You have come through a deluge and survived. You deserve this warmth. Air, water, fire. The elements can't hurt you when he's there. He arranges a late night soiree. We sit around, he with his harmonium. He's happiest when there is music. He is a full orchestra by himself. He works in turn the tabla, dholak, naal, cymbal, and of course his favorite, the harmonium. Always the harmonium. And he croons melodiously, a voice that emanates from deep within, touched with gentle beauty and nostalgia. It's time for the usual late supper, rattle in the kitchen. Amidst the clatter, he wants an encore, something slightly classical to end the night. His harmonium is still vibrant. He plays with the same ease and looks appreciatively. We follow the World Cup cricket final on television together. He anticipates a big inning from Sachin, but no, not this time. He eggs bhaji on in Punjabi to spin the team to victory. The humor of his Punjabi takes away briefly our attention from the tense game. A quiet jubilation in the early hours of the morning in his house. We had waited a long time for this victory. Yet, when we leave, there is an inexplicable sense of loss. We want all that back, or at least one last soiree, an encore. On his table, his newspapers, a book, his reading glasses, keys. But he is gone. Kalas. The word is explained as Garib, Daridra, Samapt, Khatam. We feel the full force of its meaning. However, we know he is there on the right side of divinity, by the door, smartly spruced, softly calling our names. Farewell, Ajmer. Now let's get back to more mundane thing about method of narration in a short story. Well, it's not so mundane because creativity is the highest business that you can engage in and talk about. Now, I had suggested a number of methods of narration in the last session. Let's go over them very quickly. I had suggested the omniscient method of narration. It is the easiest, simplest way of narrating, where the author assumes the eye of God posture. He sees everything, he is everywhere. And he is able to tell about all the characters. He is able to traverse large expanse of space and time. Now, the advantage of this method is that for the beginner it is a very straightforward method of telling story. The main disadvantage is that it loses a bit of credibility. The reader can ask, how can the writer know everything? How can it be that he's everywhere? He knows about everyone. Well, that's one of the shortcomings that you can live with in this method, and you expect the reader to suspend his judgment and take the work as you have presented it to the reader. Now, the second method that I talked about is using a narrator. Whereas Eye of God technique, in Eye of God technique, you use he. In choosing a narrator, you use the first person narration. And you can select one of the characters from your story to be the narrator. You can select the main character to tell the story, or you can find a minor character who is able to tell a story, or somebody who is at the periphery, or somebody who is entirely out of the story. The main advantage with the first person narration is as soon as you mention I, you gain credibility, because the I is able to say that I was present there, I saw it happen, I witnessed the event, and the reader is willing to believe you because you were there. Now, this method can become a bit more complicated if your narrator happens to be an unreliable person. You can have a lot of fun telling the story from the point of view of an unreliable narrator. I do not suggest that you try this method because it's a complex method, although there's a lot of fun in having a narrator who is forgetful, or narrator who is not able to see clearly, a narrator who has bad memory. Now, this will raise a lot of question about truth and veracity and trusting the account that is presented to the reader. But I suggest at the early stage, stick to the a reliable narrator whose account you can trust. This question of trust and truth is an interesting issue in fiction. And there is another method where these concepts can be examined, can be explored, and that is by having more than one narrator. You can have a story in which there are two narrators. Now this method is termed multiple narration. In multiple narration you have multiple perspectives. You can have the same event being narrated by more than one character. Now suppose the incident that you want to narrate is domestic violence. That's a very popular subject. Now if you have a man and a woman telling the same story, you will see that you have entirely different account. The man will narrate domestic violence from his perspective, the woman will narrate from her perspective. And thus the question of veracity, truth, whom to trust becomes problematic. And the issue of relationship also becomes a problematic issue. This is also a very complex method of storytelling. I do not want the writers who are starting out to engage in this, but know this. Know all the possibilities and choose the best method of narration for the story that you want to tell. In the next segment, I shall be talking about the other side of writing, and that is reading.